With that, I'd like to go to our guest, Luke. If we could put Luke on the screen. I can see you on the small. There we go. Luke, nice to see you. Welcome. Luke Irving is the head of the Mine Action Service in the occupied Palestinian territory, and he's briefing us from Gaza, if I'm not mistaken. So, Luke, please, you have the floor, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you very much, Steph. Okay, short statement from UNMAS. UNMAS has been operating in Gaza and the occupied West Bank since 2009. We have, like the rest of the UN, remained in Gaza throughout the past 14 months of hostilities and continue to adapt to the changing needs of the ceasefire response. Over the past 14 months, our teams have encountered a range of explosive ordnance, including aerial bombs, mortars, rockets, projectiles, grenades, and improvised explosive devices. These have killed and injured civilians in Gaza, and they have risked preventing humanitarian activities from taking place safely. Preliminary data collected through reports by individuals to our online public information system shows that at least 92 people have been killed or injured from explosive ordnance since October 23. And we are continuing to receive reports of incidents from both before and during the ceasefire. Moving on to the ceasefire response. Since the ceasefire came into effect, people have started returning to their homes, and humanitarian personnel can reach areas which have previously been inaccessible. Yet we have already received informal reports of civilians coming across explosive ordnance in their homes, and humanitarian convoys are finding items more and more as we reach new areas which we previously could not get to. This includes large aircraft bombs, mortars, anti-tank weapons, rockets, and rifle grenades. No clear figure exists on people injured or killed by explosive ordnance so far, but we've received unverifiable reports on 24 victims since the ceasefire has taken place, which averages to over 2 people per day. UNMAS has focused on scaling up on our response, making sure people know how to navigate the explosive threat, particularly when returning to their homes along routes or in areas that may be contaminated. We do this through a range of means, including working through local partners, sharing leaflets and posters, and conducting educational and training sessions to give people the necessary knowledge to navigate the threat. We also accompany humanitarian convoys along the highest risk routes and conduct risk assessments of areas to see whether they're safe for activities to take place. Right now, the scale and need and number of requests we are receiving, the team is working round the clock to respond. As of yesterday, UNMAS and partners have conducted 42 tasks in support of the humanitarian community since the ceasefire. Okay, moving to the West Bank. We are increasingly concerned about the current situation in the occupied West Bank as high levels of violence persist amid ongoing Israeli operations, exchanges with armed Palestinians, settler violence, and Palestinian attacks against Israelis. We work closely with the Palestinian Authority's Mine Action Center, who report a significant increase in the number of explosive items found over the past months throughout the West Bank, including in populated areas. We have been providing risk education to communities, particularly IDPs, who are at increased risk, and work with the Palestinian Authority on capacity building efforts so that they can respond to this increasing threat. In summary, the threat of explosive ordnance in Gaza and the West Bank is present and impacting the lives of civilians and the delivery of humanitarian aid, including since the ceasefire began. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. And I just want, before we go to questions, confirming that you are briefing from Gaza.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm in central Gaza right now.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Edie, and then Emily, and then Bissan.
Thank you very much, Luke, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Of the victims in Gaza who've been trying to return home, can you give us some examples of where they were, what happened, and the extent of injuries?
I don't have specifics. It's very hard to verify that level of granular detail. But but I can give scenarios where you can imagine the intensity of conflict and fighting in Gaza. I'm not going to pick out any particular area. And when people move into areas where they previously had left, it could be their homes, it could be other infrastructure, etc., there's a risk of explosive ordnance, unexploded bombs, etc., being in that area. A lot of people might not understand the threat of what those items are. So when they come into contact with them, either picking up or moving it, it's highly dangerous. And those explosive items could then function as they're initially designed to do. And of course, they're weapons of war and they're deadly. So you can imagine the impact that will have. I hope that gives some clarity. We are trying, as access increases with the ceasefire, this is a type of detail we'd like to capture more of, particularly, more specific examples which you asked for, and I hope to update next time I have the opportunity. But at the moment, our focus is to warn people and to meet the immediate needs. And I will just add, we are focusing on critical infrastructure, so getting hospitals back, power stations, etc., making sure that's safe for our other UN colleagues and humanitarians and Palestinians in Gaza to use those facilities.
And
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask, how many teams are actually in Gaza trying to defuse bombs and other explosive ordnance?
Thank you. I should stress that is something we're trying to scale up, and on speaking on behalf of the mine action community, UNMAS is the coordinating body. We hope that will double in the next month. But at the moment, I'm not going to hold back. We can only get people in now.
You're frozen, Luke. If we could ask our engineers, see if they can. Okay, give us two minutes.
Could be my slides.
Sorry, you were frozen for a bit. If you could just answer the last question again. Thank you.
Yeah, there's 5 operators currently for UNMAS, which will double next month.
Thank you. Amélie?
Thanks. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. I was wondering, I know the situation is very complex, but do you have any kind of idea or estimate of what kind of part of the territory in Gaza is actually contaminated by non-exploded material, and how long, if the ceasefire lasts, it would take for international teams or national teams to clear this explosive material? Thank you.
I think it's too soon to speculate the exact numbers and time it will take, etc. If you look at Gaza, you can see the levels of devastation. And I hear from colleagues in the north as well, they're getting the levels of devastation and damage. So you can assume when there's active conflict, there'll be a contamination from unexploded ordnance. It always happens when fighting takes place. So we can assume that areas will be contaminated. And again, if you visually look at Gaza, it's quite obvious. So I don't want to speculate on time to do things or where the concentration of things are. We wouldn't have that information until there's a very thorough survey, etc., that takes place. I hope that gives you some insight.
Have answered, but you said that you will scale up your efforts and the teams going forward. But is there like a specific plan in place to work area by area? How does that work? How has it worked out? Can you give us a little bit more details? And then I have a quick question on the West Bank too.
Okay, great. Firstly, for that, our 2 priorities at the moment is risk education. So that's warning civilians, population in Gaza, the risk posed by explosive ordnance. And the second thing is what we call explosive hazard assessments. And that's going to like critical infrastructure. So the prioritization is the highest need, humanitarian needs. And I mentioned it before at the start, hospitals, power stations, clinics, etc. All the facilities to sort of return life back to normal is what we're prioritizing. So the plans that are set are against humanitarian needs, if that helps.
And for the West Bank, you mentioned the West Bank. Given what has happened in Jenin and Tul Karim, how big of a risk is actually having also explosive devices in some areas there? And have there been any casualties that you've registered over the past few weeks?
Yeah, it's unverified again. There's been reports of quite considerable numbers of improvised explosive devices and explosive ordnance. And again, I don't want to, there has been reports on casualties from various sides. I can't right now recall exact numbers, but there certainly has been. And again, related to the escalation of violence.
Thank you. Frank?
Hi, Frank Uciardo from TRC World. Thank you for doing this press conference. Mr. Irving, from a forensic perspective, can you tell us where these munitions that you've been discovered in have come from? Basically, you come upon unexploded ordnances. Who made them? Where have they come from? Are some of them from American manufacturers?
We don't speculate on where the weapon systems have come from. We simply are here to remove them and make the situation safe.
Come upon them, there's obviously some signatures on them, indicators as to where they come from. Do you not reveal that information?
Not right here now.
Why not?
Because that wouldn't help the situation. I know my focus is to for the teams to remove the threat of the ordnance, not to begin that level of analysis.
Will we eventually get any of that information from your operation or your unit, or do we have to go somewhere else for that?
I can't speculate on that right now.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Thanks so much for the briefing. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Just a couple of follow-ups as well. When you say you want to scale up from 5 currently in Gaza, what would be the ideal number to have within Gaza doing this work? And for people like myself who don't know a lot about weapons, a variation on the question you were just asked, is there a specific type of ordnance that tends not to explode upon landing that you come across? Is there a particularly bad sort of bomb that you're dealing with? And then I was just looking at one of your annual reports, and I don't think the Gaza operation receives any US funding, but have you at all been impacted by this US freeze on aid? Thank you.
Okay, start with your first one. Operators, again, we're scaling up and to meet the need, and that is very high at the moment. Again, without a baseline survey, I can't say I need X amount of operators to deal with the task, but again, speaking on behalf of sort of the mine action community, welcoming is, I know there's a lot of operators trying to get in at the moment. Absolutely welcome them. We'll get our own operators up to speed as well and increase that as much as we can. I cannot give a specific figure because it equates to how much big the problem is, but absolutely need to double down efforts there to increase numbers. With US funding, again, at the moment, UNMAS does not, oPt does not have US funding, so we're okay, but obviously there's other wider impacts, which has been discussed already. And sorry, your second question was on how deadly a particular type of weapon systems are. Again, it's a, how long is a piece of string type answer. It varies depending on the state of weapon systems. They can pose a significant threat. So there's no, again, it's impossible to speculate any particular system that is more deadly than the other. If it fails to function, it's a UXO, unexploded bomb or ordnance. It's ready to go off, and the threat is absolutely serious.
Thank you. Ibtisam, Damilola, and then Evelyn.
Hi.
Hold on, your mic is not on. There you go.
Okay, sorry. My name is Ibtisam Azem, Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I have first a question regarding the situation in the Gaza Strip before October 7th, because there were several wars before that, and as you said, you are there actually since 29. So was the Gaza Strip actually clean before, from previous wars? And then, are you able to get the permissions and the equipment you need in the scale you you need, and who would need to give you this? Is it only the Israelis, or you need also permission from the Egyptians? And could you please clarify, when you talk about 5 operators, do you mean like 5 people? What do you exactly mean?
Okay, again, that's my poster's fallen down, tape gave away. Okay, firstly, on the permissions, again, we're working with various stakeholders. That is discussions which are ongoing. I'd hope for some more positive news regarding that, but I won't speculate again on the details of that. With pre to October 7th, 23, yes, there was contamination. It was being dealt with as items are come across. I'll give a context. If you imagine Europe post World War II, they still find items today. So these things never quite go away. So again, that did happen. And sorry, in terms of operators amount, I'm talking 5 individuals, but they're the highly qualified technical specialists. They're in a slightly larger team, if that gives you any idea.
Thank you. Damilola?
Banja Damilola, Pass Blue. My question has been asked, but I was hoping you could offer some more clarity on whether the U.S. State Department suspension of funds for demining programs affects actions in Gaza. What you said earlier wasn't very clear. Thank you.
What I can say is it doesn't impact UNMAS here in Gaza.
Thank you. Evelyn?
I think Damilola just asked it, but the Evelyn Leopold, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists, President Trump has abolished any mine action group that he had. Does it have an impact on you, or?
As I said in the earlier
Vietnam
question, right?
has already complained?
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. As I said earlier, right now, and I can only speak on behalf of the program I have eyes on, we're unimpacted.
Thank you. Abdelhamid, and I think we'll close it. Go ahead, Abdelhamid.
Thank you, sir. I have a few questions. Abdelhamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. First, I want to ask you if there is any cooperation from the Israeli side giving you some data about the most contaminated areas or the kind of ordnance they dropped on over Gaza. And my second question, if you find these unexploded ordnance above the ground, most of them, and did you find some landmines buried under the ground? And my last question, if you have any educational programs to educate the public, especially children in Gaza, who are the most vulnerable and the first to be hurt by these unexploded ordnance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. So on education, absolutely, this is something we're really trying to push at the moment. We call it explosive ordnance risk education. It's delivered by us as UNMAS, our partners in the wider mine action community, and it's a real important thing at the moment. And it's measured and balanced in light of the audiences. So if it's young children, there's particular ways we reach out to them. If it's agricultural workers, there's a particular ways we reach out to them related to how they work. So to answer that, absolutely yes, and it's something we really want to do. With I think you mentioned mines. We have not come across any mines. I don't expect to come across any mines. Again, to get technical, it will be unexploded ordnance. So projectiles, rockets, grenades, that type of thing. And forgive me, and your other question?
On the first question about if you have any Israeli cooperation in giving
as I said,
data.
Yeah, thank you. As I said before, we do work with stakeholders, all stakeholders sort of look at how we can do our jobs better and more effectively. But otherwise, there's nothing else I can add to that.
Thank you. Luke, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you most importantly for all the work that you do on our behalf. We wish you all the best and hope to see you back in the briefing room soon. Take care.
Thank you.